you're one of the witches in Agatha All Along. This is your first foray into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Were you excited, intimidated? Like, what was going on when you when you
Oh,
joined this?
all of it. All of it. I mean, I think it took me a while to believe I'd actually gotten the job because it was certainly not something I ever conceived. It wasn't something I thought was possible for me professionally. But yeah, I mean, I was so excited. And the cast was one that I just thought, God, if I'm ever going to do Marvel, what a way to do it and what a company to be a part of. And I mean, I think the intimidation was less about Marvel, honestly, and more about like living up to what I thought, what everyone was bringing to it. You know, like Jack, our showrunner, is so brilliant. I thought the stories that she created were so nuanced and funny and I was just like I gotta rise to the challenge, you know.
Well, so it's interesting. Like, there's always a bit of secrecy around
Mm.
these projects. So I wonder, like, how much did you know about who you would be playing or what your arc would be? Like, what
So
were you?
little. Like I didn't even know I had to sing.
Yeah.
I found that out after I got the job. The sides are dummy sides, and so I could kind of guess at what might be important in the story, like what they were, but I really didn't know. And honestly, my final audition was a huge fight scene that ended up being completely different when we went to shoot. So, um, yeah, I knew so little other than that, like, I think my dummy sides were the first audition I had was the scene where she's a security guard. And I remember, I just remember reading the sides and be like, no one's going to cast me as a cop. But then I was like, oh, it's a mall cop. Okay, it's fine.
So was like singing and fighting, were those things that you've like done before in terms of acting, or was that all like brand new for you?
Well, the singing was brand new in terms of on camera. I mean, I did musicals as a kid, the way
Right.
that most kids who end up acting have done a musical. But I wouldn't say that it's definitely not something that like on my resume, I'm like, I can sing and here's my range. Like I would rather not because I find singing really terrifying. And it's so vulnerable. And I think those are like singers are athletes, and I think it's hard to kind of jump in there and be like, just because you can karaoke does not mean you are a professional singer. So it was cool. It was just such a cool way to revisit this, something that I did as a kid. And that actually is something I was intimidated by. I think one of the first things we did was go into the recording studio and record those songs before we even filmed. And to be doing it with Bobby and Kristen, who are, legends, that was intimidating. But I just tried to stay connected to what the song was about. And because they didn't know if I could sing before I got the job, I just kept telling myself, like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be good. Like, it's not about Alice being a good singer. You just have to connect to what she is singing about. And that was also really liberating from how I experienced singing when I was a kid. Because back then it's like the best singer gets the role and it doesn't really matter whether you understand what you're singing about. It's just what kid is on pitch, um, and so it was nice to really just approach it as an actor. And then, obviously like having Bobby and Kristen and like Patti LuPone be like, you can carry a tune was just like the best.
I have to imagine if you're getting that compliment from Patti LuPone, it's
Yeah, I mean, it really was like I died and gone to heaven. I just kept thinking, gosh, of like high school me who was, I fell in love. I mean, we all got the theater bug doing that like in high school or whatever. And I didn't think it was a real job. And I was just like, there's no way I'm ever like, I had friends who were, I'm going to conservatory. And I just remember thinking like, you guys are idiots. Like, this is just for fun. And it's not a real job. And I just was like, there's no way anyone's going to cast me, like, especially, what was on the television when I was growing up. And so to be like with legends list and me having to sing live by myself so many times in a row in front of everyone, and have people be so kind was really like such a beautiful gift.
your character, Alice Lou Gulliver. Who was she? I mean, not just on the page, but like, who was she to you? And given that you had so little to go off of day by day, how did you find your way into her?
Well, the beautiful thing is once I got the job, we got all the scripts. So I could map it out. And the thing that I really saw was like, she's somebody who is acting tough as like her best offense is defense kind of thing. And, you know, and she's sort of acting like she's scary and in order to, for people to leave her alone. And I think that her whole, she has like literal armor, like the way she dresses, everything is sort of conveying a like, you know, don't mess with me. But she's, I think, the mushiest of all the witches and actually the most sort of sensitive. And you know, there's little, I think she's taking care of everybody in little ways because she was ultimately kind of neglected. I think she's also like a Nepo baby, you know? She's like, I imagine that she's on the road with her mom and her mom is this rock star, like literal rock star. And I just thought a lot about what that is to feel like you don't know, you're kind of insecure about what talents you have to offer the world. And then the validation that you're seeking from your mom, because the thing that I think was in the script, but we had to cut a lot of it for time and stuff is that, and there's still a little bit in the show, but Alice's mom is an alcoholic. And so there's that element of like that kind of codependency, that kind of abuse that she's nursing. And she's basically a kid who had to be kind of a parent. And there's that resentment only to find out at the end that her mom really, that alcohol abuse and all of that was because she was overwhelmed with how to protect her daughter from this horrible thing. So it's sort of a poetic, like just a beautiful metaphor that Jack created to talk about intergenerational trauma, substance abuse, you know, all in one little nutshell.
Right. And then a nutshell that is like in the midst of something that is, you know, this interesting kind of blending of genres and tones, you know, like there's singing and fantasy, and then there's also this darker element to it that's much more like grounded and realistic. Was it difficult to toe that line?
Yes. And I felt actually in my audition process, I kept getting told they really want a comedic actress for this part. And I was like, okay. And I would get the sides because each round there was like a new set of sides. And each round I was like, I'm seeing more drama than I'm seeing comedy. And I was really trying to wrap my head around it. And what I ultimately decided was like, I have to commit to the truth of what is on the page and just lean into that. And so then on set, when we have the full thing, it's like, because I feel like Alice's job was to be the heavy in the show, I think she had to bring a lot of emotional truth because her death is also really where things unravel for everyone. And so I was like, I have to make the pain of that mother-daughter wound really, really real. And then any opportunity I have for any kind of humor, even if Alice is kind of dry and droll, I just got to eke it out where I can. But I know that my function in that show, I don't get to be the like slapstick, like happy-go-lucky. That just wasn't her job.
The fight sequences in the show, you know, you mentioned like that being, was that something that was like brand new to you as well?
I mean, I did a little bit of dance in my early days. So I feel like I have, you know, I love movement. I was really excited to like fight. And Alice is a protection witch. So I was like, give it to me. But, you know, I think with Marvel, they're really protective of, you know, they have amazing stunt people. And so I didn't get to physically do as much fighting as I would have liked. But no, and I'm an actor who likes to work from the body outwards. It helps me. It sounds so nerdy, but I always have something I think about physically that helps me separate myself from who I'm playing. And so obviously the fight, we did some fight sessions and there was the very early on before we started shooting, Catherine introduced us to this woman that was working with her on a lot of her hand gestures. And we as a group just got like one little intro session with her. And that was great because it just gave me this other vocabulary to think about. Yeah, but I always kind of like to work with the body and Alice was like, she's like a turtle. Like she's got like this shell that she's kind of carrying to protect her. And, you know, and she's sort of climbing out of it as until she dies.
It is kind of interesting how like all these things that you kind of learn in acting classes and things like that, like just singing in musicals or doing dance, you know, it benefits you when eventually you get a job like this, or it's like now all of a sudden you have to play like.
Oh my, I mean, it really, we kept talking about on the cast would say, like, there's so many things that are mirroring our life and in the characters. And it was weird. And I think that, like, how Jack could have known, like, I had a weird relationship with music because I grew up playing classical piano and it was pretty traumatizing. And so I don't really play for fun. I hadn't sung in a very, very long time and certainly didn't think I was any good at it. And so to have to be forced to present it in front of so many people, I did have to connect to my own fear to do those scenes. Yeah, that it is kind of crazy that for so many years you're like, what did they learn in school? Like absolutely nothing. And then, and then suddenly you're like, oh no, I got to take that. And I got, so those things, and especially something like Marvel, which is so physically, it is kind of Shakespearean, like the stakes are Shakespearean. Like it actually, I think all that school stuff helps.
Was there an episode from this run that really stood out to you as like something that you're very proud of in terms of your own work or your character?
I mean, I think Alice's death was that. I think that whole journey of that song was something that I was really nervous about, and having to map it out for myself musically. Like it's a lot of transformation to get through in like really quick beats, and to try to figure out like, how do I convincingly play somebody who's like, I'm so scared, I hate this song, I don't want to play this song, to then being able to really sing the bridge, which vocally is like at the top of a belting range, the way that Bobby and Chris, they composed it. So it's like, you can't hide and you got to go for it. So I was really nervous, and I did a lot of practicing on my own. Like so much, my poor, my guy, Will, he had to listen to me. I mean, I was coming home like so late at night and still like pounding out on the keyboard, and just to make sure I knew it backwards and forwards. And, and I knew they were going to ask me to do it in one take or like, but I just needed to know that I wasn't worried about it.
It's interesting that so many people, they sign up for Marvel and they're with it for years and years and years. You're only with it for a short amount of time because there is an end to your character. Did that make it sort of even more special, knowing that you were only going to be a part of this and be within this character for a limited amount of time, or was it difficult to say goodbye to her?
I didn't know, because there was a different ending, so I didn't know how final Alice's death would be. But it was hard to say goodbye, only in the sense, I mean, I think it's perfect. And I also, I knew it was a limited series going into it. And I remember thinking, just with this cast and the storyline, I was like, I could not have imagined a better way to participate in this experience. But in terms of the grief of it, I think I felt the grief of like a character who's just starting, and usually like on a hero's journey, it's like she finally crosses over, and then to get it cut short. But I think that's right. Like that is what the story needs, and it makes the stakes of it real, and it makes the world of it real. So it was so special, and I feel like I can't imagine a different way like this. It was a perfect arc.
Since you've found that you're a pretty good singer, at least Patti LuPone, Patti LuPone approved. Are you going to do Broadway anytime soon? Any musicals coming up? What do you?
I mean, listen, if they want me, I would be curious. It is something that it scares me, just because, I mean, I've done Broadway as in straight plays, but I think a musical is just, I mean, even a straight play is so physically taxing, and 8 shows a week is no joke, but a musical is a whole other thing. And so there is a part of me that's very curious, but yeah, I would need I would need some time, some time to prepare.
Very different from when you're in the recording studio.
Oh yeah, very different. You can kind of go for it and just be like, if my vocal cords can't make it after the session, it's fine. But a musical, you have to really, I mean, you have to live like a monk. I would have to live like a monk. There would be no cheese involved at all.